Battlefield 2042, the saga continues, ladies and gentlemen. There has been an uptick in players recently from low 2000s to low 3000s. Still not great, but there are some updates coming in April, and so there is some buzz, very little still. People are still playing Battlefield 5 mostly, which is still sitting very strong at 26,500 players in terms of 24-hour peak. Battlefield 1 is still doing stronger at over 10,000 24-hour peak, and Battlefield 4 is still doing close to Battlefield 2042 numbers, sitting at almost 3,000, not quite. But we're talking about an almost decade-old Battlefield entry doing similar numbers to the latest entry, which just isn't a great sign. Now, one of the biggest improvements that need to happen is maps. They just need to be overhauled because they've just not been well designed. Visually, they look too clean and it doesn't look like the world has been ravaged by environmental cataclysms and wars. And on the other hand, in terms of design, it's just not doing it. It's just not paving the road to fun gameplay. And the developers have acknowledged this in this Battlefield Core feedback update titled Maps Kickoff. They acknowledged 5 pillars where they needed to improve things: traversal, intensity, line of sight, paths, and cover. And there was a good amount of acknowledgement in regards to the game issues, and they outlined aspects of these maps where they know need change. So that was back in March 2nd. More recently, in late March, they released another Battlefield Core feedback titled Maps Next Steps, where they went into further detail as to what plans are for upcoming content updates and refreshed versions of existing maps. When it comes to traversal, they detailed how they're gonna put out a refreshed version of Renewal alongside Kaleidoscope as part of Season 1 this summer. Those are 2 maps that many fans agree need some kind of overhaul. And there's some images here detailing some areas where they plan to make some changes. As far as traversal goes, here's what they had to say. We want to shift focus away from traversal by foot by ensuring that there are more transport vehicles active on the map. Increasing the number of active vehicles on the map isn't something we can do. A short-term solution as this has the potential to impact our separate work on improving the game performance. So this is more of a long-term goal because the game's poor performance has set them back so much that has to be the priority before they can move on to things that might affect the performance, like adding more vehicles in the map. So you can really see how all of these issues really do stack up and build up and really clog the pipeline. Cover and line of sight, as far as that's concerned, a key statement here reads, you've asked us to ensure that when we're moving around both flags and objectives to new areas, that we're also working to ensure that sufficient cover is available in their new locations. And so through images, they've outlined some examples right here, some regions where they've added some additional cover and assets, and you can kind of scroll through these right here. You can see these for yourself, and additional screenshots can be found down here. And I'll get to these images in a bit because fans are looking at this stuff and they're not enthusiastic about it because the changes don't really seem as substantial as they were hoping for. The overhaul doesn't really feel like much of an overhaul or a major refresh that will be sufficient. But I suppose only time will tell on that front when the maps actually launch. But they did acknowledge that the maps do feel too clean and pristine. You've expressed to us that you want it to feel like each flag and objective needs to have more strategic value and something that you feel is worth fighting for. We're updating the gazebo on B1 into a military installment. We'll replace grass with mud and cover the area in barbed wire to better immerse it into our world and to bring improvements to the narrative of our battles. So they're making some visual changes alongside some design changes to both reinforce the somewhat apocalyptic era that this Battlefield entry is supposed to take place in, but also to actually make maps more fun to play. That's the goal. That's the acknowledgement at the very least. Acknowledgement is good, but execution obviously matters more, and that's where things are up in the air. As far as intensity goes, they acknowledge that 128 player modes, the combat can become too chaotic around our objectives, making it hard to determine what's going on around you and where you should be keeping your attention. And they detailed some key bullet points addressing how they plan to up the intensity and lower the chaos of the 128 players. Last but not least, we have paths, and they have acknowledged that you told us that you'd you'd like to see this improve by lining up cover in such a way that it follows a clear path between objectives. You've also told us that several areas on maps are underutilized and that they serve no purpose for travel. To address this, you can expect us to explore removing the most underutilized areas. So the distribution center here, for example, you can see all this stuff has been removed because many felt it just served no purpose. There's all this cover and all this stuff happening here, but it's just kind of useless fodder that doesn't require much engagement with when it comes to objectives and winning the game, so they just got rid of it completely. So those are the acknowledgements that EA and DICE have made about the issues surrounding the game's map design, but the screenshots that were shown have not been particularly well received, as you can see right here. Actual comparisons for the Battlefield 2042 map redesigns, and basically people are finding the changes very simplistic. They're adding a couple like big crates here and there, or they're adding a couple assets, but it really doesn't feel like a major refresh. And some examples here of comparisons include how they're adding like some containers here, and you can see right here they weren't there before, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, does that really make a huge difference? Next screenshot, they've added this right here. The solution seemingly has been to add a bunch of like containers and rectangular objects in the middle of this area. I don't know, it just seems really just like thrown in there without much thought. It really doesn't feel like it'll make a huge difference. Here's another screenshot pointing out how the only difference really is just the addition of more structures and rectangular elements and covers and containers that didn't exist before. And then last but not least, right here, we got more comparisons. This is what's being highlighted. Additional structures in this area. Players who are not happy with these maps don't seem to believe that this is anywhere close to enough. And so if you scroll down to the comments, you'll see people saying stuff like, I remember when they said that they were going to rework the maps, that they were probably just going to dump a load of shipping containers around. How can they be this predictable? Basically, people joked, imagine if they didn't actually really rework the map in a substantial way where it really feels like a complete overhaul, but they just added a bunch of cover and containers around. And what started off as a joke ended up being exactly what some of these players predicted. A second user responded with same, literally thought, okay, so container sandbags and more frickin' cranes, like why not add military trucks, car wrecks, railways, topple buildings, etc. Oh wait, that requires effort. So both from a map design perspective and a visual design perspective, it just feels like they're sprinkling in some things, some additional elements here and removing some stuff here, but it doesn't feel like the maps are really going to change substantially enough that it's going to resolve people's qualms with them. People are also pointing out some of the bizarre placement of the shipping containers, nothing quite like making the map more immersive by putting closed shipping containers in the middle of an active crop field. Again, it just feels so thrown in there without much thought. It just feels like a rush job. People saying, is this an April Fool's joke? They're laughing at this situation. This was the update that was supposed to spruce up the map, but the update now is being looked at with a pessimistic outlook. Like, if this is all we are seeing right now, then I can't imagine that come season 1, when all this stuff's supposed to come out, the updates will be substantial enough. A lot of people also saying it doesn't look like the additions that they made required a whole lot of effort. Give a single fan one day in a Far Cry map editor and they could come up with something infinitely better. Bruh, give me the map editor and I could do the same as this and have it released in an evening. Freaking lame effort, seriously. How to tell the community you don't actually give an F while saying you do. Now, I'm not a developer, so I'm not going to sit here and talk about what's easy and what's hard to implement, but I understand the sentiment of, okay, 5 months have passed since the game's launch, and this is all they have to show for it. It doesn't feel like this game is going to make progress fast enough for this live service to remain alive. And I mean, it's already on live support, essentially, and it's starting to feel more and more like they should just pull the plug and end the misery. And there's more than one thread talking about this stuff. Here's another one that's been kind of trending in the Battlefield 2042 subreddit. They finally made the maps feel less clean and more war-torn. Sarcasm. By adding a bunch of containers and rectangular structures around the map. In the comments below, people talking about how in South Korea, one of the prominent things about the real-life country is the subway system, and how this map needs a subway system to cut through the map. South Korea is one of the largest and most intricate subway systems. That'd be cool. I don't think that's gonna happen. That would require way too much effort, and given the slow progression of this game's content and fixes, it seems highly unlikely that they'll implement something this major. Somebody else here saying 5 months and they managed to place some props in the environment editor. My expectations were low, but damn. Indeed, when you say stuff like we're going to rework and refresh the maps, you just expect something that the second you look at it, you go, whoa, this feels totally different. But what we're getting instead is, wait, this all looks the same. Oh, I guess there's some containers here now. That's kind of the vibe people have been getting. And after all of the woe surrounding this game's launch and its post-launch, it's just already aggravated players all the more. But beyond qualms surrounding what so far looks to be rather minimal updates to maps, people have continued to kind of mock the game and highlight some of its issues. After the whole Will Smith and Chris Rock fiasco, for example, people basically saying it feels like EA pulled a Will Smith and slapped Battlefield 2042 players out of the blue by releasing Battlefield 2042, which was supposed to be a celebration of Battlefield and by Battlefield fans for Battlefield fans, in such a dire technical state, lacking in so much content and its identity not feeling like Battlefield at all. People still highlighting UI and UX issues, another high IQ design choice. You have to unhighlight the item to see its progression. And this is just one of a myriad HUD, UX, UI issues that continue to persist in this game. And people were quick to point out the irony of one of the lead developers when it comes to Battlefield 2042 UI, calling out Elden Ring for its UI and UX design. So, somebody here said, man, how the F is the UI UX dude for this game gonna talk crap about Elden Ring? Shake my head. Not saying Elden Ring's UI and UX are perfect, but I mean, if you can't even design your own game's UX and UI with some of the most basic elements that should be sort of common sense in terms of what is good UI design and what isn't, don't talk trash about another game that has done far better than yours in terms of critical reception and its accomplishments, and not only actually living up to the hype, but in a lot of ways surpassing it, the complete opposite of Battlefield 2042, which there was a lot of excitement around, and it over-delivered in how it under-delivered. And then last but not least, people still making fun of the fact that revolvers have not been designed properly in this game. The reload, you can see, yields 5 bullets instead of 6, and then you have to reload again for the 6th. Basically, the game is treating a revolver like any other pistol where you can load a round in the chamber. But with a revolver, obviously it's not supposed to work this way. This is an issue that's been pointed out before numerous times, but it's been 5 months since the game's launch, and something as simple as this hasn't really been fixed yet, and it just paints an even more negative picture. So yeah, this is the current state of the optics surrounding Battlefield 2042 right now, how fans have been reacting to the updates. Things are still looking very negative. Sentiments are still looking overall very negative. There's a sense of hopelessness and disillusionment. But I suppose at the end of the day, only time will tell. We'll see what happens when the maps launch. They did say that these elements shown here through screenshot, it's all work in progress, but existing fans and players argue that it really doesn't look like a whole lot of progress has really been made. The reworks look very simplistic, and if this is all they have to show us now with Season 1 approaching very soon, the expectation is that there will be disappointment. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is everything you need to know about the latest surrounding Battlefield 2042. Let me know in the comments below what you think about these updates surrounding upcoming map reworks. Do you think there will be more substantial updates later, or do you think that players and fans' pessimisms are warranted given what work in progress they've shown us already? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.